If I asked you to think back to your school days, you might recall a friendship group you connected with, maybe a teacher you really liked, or a club that you were a part of. Well, for me, it was the school choir. And I remember going to the events with all these different schools, and you could always see who belonged to which choir, even on the events where you didn't have to wear your school uniform. There'd always be a performance from one of the high-achieving children with wealthy parents' schools. These guys would be perfectly dressed with their perfect smiles and their perfect grades, and when they sang, they sounded like this. And then we had the cool school, right? These guys had the musicality, the moves, and they sounded like this. Yeah. And then, that was me and my mates, with our 1990s ponytails and our Britpop fashion, know what I mean? And well, when we sang, we sounded like this.
If you want my future, forget my past. If you want to get with me, better make it last.
Oh, yeah. We did have a laugh, though, do you know what I mean? See, the reason this commonality existed between the choirs is actually the same reason why it's the memory of people during our school years that tends to occupy our minds the most. Our brains are sociable by design, actively looking for connections to make with the people around us. So when we laugh, learn, play, create together, our brains start to form a kind of symmetry with each other, creating this common way of thinking and relating. It's how we achieve that cultural transference and see those generational patterns of behavior and belief. Now, if we add to this an education system that brings together the same age group of children, from the same geographic location, often the same socio-economic backgrounds and belief systems, and we ask them to learn the same curriculum, preparing for the same exams year after year after year, well, it's not surprising to see that uniformity starts to go beyond the clothes we wear. As a creative practitioner working with children and young people, it's my belief that this sociable brain is what we need to transform the way we learn. And I want to show you how online learning is a tool we can use to do that. Now, for a long time, I was busy bringing together people from across the UK to work on film and theatre projects. And whilst immense fun, the feasibility of bringing people together from so far was really tough. And so, in December 2019, I announced the dawn of a new era. It was going to be Imaginarium Academy online. Okay, the dream was to bring together children and young people from across the world to sharpen their passions, heighten their imaginations, and flourish their enjoyments, all in these fun and collaborative classes in screen acting and filmmaking, and like no one had a clue what I was talking about. But some brave and faithful families agreed to join us in the journey, and by March 2020, we were already in full flow. Now, before I go any further, can I just address the elephant in the room? Okay, all you parents who remember back in 2020, just like waking up in the morning and being like, yay, we're homeschooling on Zoom. Just raise your hands for me. Yeah, oh, 1, 2, maybe. Yeah, no, the world tried online learning and it was miserable, agreed? But knowing everything we do about the sociable brain and the power of bringing people together, maybe online learning isn't bad. Maybe it's just a little misunderstood. Well, for the last 3.5 years, I've worked with over 250 children and young people online. And here's 3 things that I've realized really helps make online learning a success. Make sure everyone feels seen and heard. Now, in a cameras on and mics on class, just giving people permission to share about their day, to tell a funny story, in my world, most commonly to introduce their pets, it's enough just to bring those attentions towards the screen and actually start to build a community of belonging. Collaboration is king. To succeed, learners really need autonomy over their work, with lots and lots of opportunity to collaborate. Now, I've seen breakout rooms where 14-year-old strangers become brilliant friends whilst making their very first ever feature film together. Understand that social interaction triggers hyperfocus. Now, this isn't something we want for long periods of time, so of course, any online learning comes with the responsibility of getting outside and shaking off the cobwebs. However, I have repeatedly seen 1-hour Zoom sessions far exceed expectations in output. So to make the most of this hyper-focused state, we need to keep sessions short, interactive, and really inclusive of everybody's thoughts and ideas. Now, when these three elements come together, we start to create an environment for the sociable brain to get connecting. Now, back in 2020, I asked a group of filmmakers to create a short film together. It could be about anything they wanted. They would work together to take it from creation through to final completion. At the time, we had kids logging on from the UK, from Europe, and all the way in the UAE. When the films were completed, we discovered that we had a cluster of original films, original work, all about, you guessed it, a mystery virus that drove people inside their homes, forcing them to panic buy food and toilet roll. Now, all of these young people were living through the same global pandemic, but within different cultural backdrops, daily governed by different rules and regulations, and listening to different government and media narratives. By working together, they were beginning to process their own experience, whilst internalizing the stories from others around the world. Their sociable brains started to carve out this new narrative that went way beyond their own lived experience to encompass a new perspective on a real-world global pandemic. Now, that's a lot of learning for a 1-hour Zoom class. Think for a moment what other topics these sociable brains could begin to explore. Imagine how perspectives might shift when diverse minds come together to think about climate change, poverty, or social injustice, because let's face it, these are some of the problems that our children and young people are one day going to be asked to fix. Year after year, we see the brightest minds graduating from top universities, the height of our education system. New, brilliant minds ready to bring brilliant solutions, and yet we're failing to see enough tangible change in the areas that matter most. Because our education system isn't enough in a turbulent and changing world. And old school curriculums are not dynamic enough to prepare our children for a shifting landscape dominated by technology and AI. But when we make connection a key element in education, it doesn't just feel nice, it heightens our sense of self. We become more authentic because in understanding others, we understand who we are. And we need these free-thinking minds collaborating and unlocking each other, affirming our humanity and reminding us of what we can achieve together. So what if we try something new? What if instead of gathering the same people to do the same things, we just fling open the doors on education and dare to create a platform where creative minds get to think and dream and build and grow together? Imagine a global network of learning where our thinking isn't restricted or limited, but rather elevated by the people that we connect with. We're often told that we are facing one of the toughest times in our history, but we're also able to connect with each other now in ways that were unimaginable just a few years ago. Well, we have the methods and we have the tools. So how about we be brave enough to try something new? Thank you.